Hello, everybody. This is Joseph P. Farrell with news and views on Thursday, September 25th, 2025. Boy, have we got a hot little potato to talk about today. But before we do that, the housekeeping and house cleaning needs to be taken care of. My apologies to you all for missing last week's news and views. In fact, it completely slipped my mind until I came in late at night to check my email and go to bed, and one of the members told me, "Where's the news and views?" And I have to ask your forgiveness. I was busily preparing for a visit from some family last weekend that I had not seen in about 30 years, some of them, and it just completely slipped my mind. We had a good visit, but that's what happened. And a reminder that there's no vid chat tomorrow. I'm still kind of recovering and recuperating from from the visit. I don't have the energy I used to, so I figured I wasn't going to schedule a vid chat for tomorrow. Our next vid chat will be a week from tomorrow, Friday, October 3rd, and that will be the 2 o'clock in the afternoon vid chat. I had fully intended, when I sat down to do this news and views today, to talk about the Secret Service shutting down all those servers that were located approximately 35 miles, I think it was northwest of New York City. The Secret Service raided a bank of servers that preceded President Trump's visit to the United Nations General Assembly. And the bank of servers, it appears, was designed for massive denial of service attacks on New York City. We don't know any more than that, but I fully intended to talk about that. I probably will talk about it in next week's blogs. But as I was preparing for the news and views today, another story came in from submitted by an individual who chooses to remain completely anonymous. He does not even want me to use his initials. And this one, I have to admit, immediately took precedence over the almost equally important story of the Secret Service raid on those servers. This is a little article that appeared over at Zero Hedge. The title of the article is CFTC set to allow, listen to this, stablecoins as collateral in derivatives markets. Now, folks, this one I've been warning about. Even the Russians lately got in on the act, trying to warn people that basically what it appears that they're trying to do is take care of all the financial problems that they've got sloshing around in the system by moving everything into a digital currency where you're going to get tokenized assets and computer blips in return for the hard assets, which they get, of course. But I want you to listen very carefully to the paragraphs that I've selected to pull out of this article. I may even read some of them twice, maybe even 3 times, just for effect, because the implications of what's being said are that profound before I get to my really extreme, off the end of the twig dive into the canyon of high-octane speculation. And I emphasize it's an extreme speculation. There are many other possibilities and explanations as to what's going on. As usual, I'm going to take the most extreme because I don't put anything past these people. So here's what the article actually said, beginning with the first paragraph. Quote, the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission is looking to allow tokenized assets, including stablecoins, to be used in derivatives markets as collateral in a move supported by crypto executives. And let me read that one again. The U.S. Commodities Futures Trading Commission is looking to allow tokenized assets, including stablecoins, to be used in derivative markets as collateral in a move supported by crypto executives. Gee golly gosh, I wonder why they'd be supporting such a move. Now let's skip a couple paragraphs. Quote, if implemented, stablecoins like USDC and Tether would be treated similarly to traditional collateral like cash or U.S. Treasuries in regulated derivatives trading. Let me repeat that sentence for you. If implemented, stablecoins like USDC and Tether would be treated similarly to traditional collateral like cash or U.S. Treasuries in regulated derivatives trading. Congress passed laws earlier this year regulating stablecoins, which have seen their adoption grow among financial institutions. Now we're going to skip a little bit further. Crypto executives from stablecoin issuers Circle Internet Group, Tether, Ripple Labs, and crypto exchanges Coinbase and Crypto.com all gave their stamp of approval for the Commodities Future Trading Commission's move. Circle President Heath Tarbett said that the Genius Act, quote, creates a world where payment stablecoins issued by licensed American companies, please note that they're licensing private companies to create money, can be used as collateral in derivatives and other traditional financial markets. In other words, all of this is once again being connected to derivatives. Coinbase Chief Legal Officer Paul Grewal also backed the initiative and said in an X post on Tuesday that, quote, tokenized collateral and stablecoins can unlock U.S. derivatives markets and put us ahead of global competition, unquote. Now, let's skip towards the final two paragraphs in this article. Listen very closely. This may be one that I'll read 3 times, just so that it will sink in. Quote, establishing clear rules for valuation, custody, and settlement will give institutions the certainty they need, while guardrails on reserves and governance will build trust and resilience, unquote. Let me repeat that again. Quote, establishing clear rules for valuation, custody, and settlement will give institutions the certainty they need, while guardrails on reserves and governance will build trust and resilience, unquote. And then the last paragraph I'm going to quote from this article. Quote, FOM's announcement comes the same day the Securities and Exchange Commission Chairman Paul Atkins said his agency is working on an innovation exemption that would act as a regulatory carve-out, giving crypto companies temporary relief from older securities rules while the SEC develops tailored regulations. Now, put those two together, folks, and what do you have? Well, first of all, you have clear rules for the valuation of the crypto collateral itself. In other words, they not only get to make the money, they get to determine its value. I hope that sunk in. They also get to establish the rules for custody and settlement of any cryptocurrency asset used as collateral in the derivatives market. And then, on top of all that, they're carving out for themselves a bunch of exemptions. Now, folks, I don't know about you, But if Foghorn Leghorn were around, he would be raising the tail of that dog and giving it a good paddling on the behind. Uh, it's just over the top ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. So here's my wild, high octane nosedive into the canyon of speculation. And trust me, folks, there are many other ways of interpreting what they're doing, but I'm going to go, as always, for the most extreme implication that I can think of from connecting these paragraphs together and trying to make one whole entity and some sense out of it. The idea of establishing valuation and tying this whole scheme into derivatives gives the game away. Why? Because I've been saying for years, ever since the financial collapse in 2008, and ever since my appearance of my book Babylon's Banksters, that the credit default swaps and the mortgage securities fraud and everything else that got tied up into the derivatives markets ballooned the amount of derivatives somewhere, as we've constantly been hearing and constantly been repeating, into derivatives sloshing around in the system that amount to 14 to 17 quadrillion dollars. In other words, several multiples more than the entire gross domestic product of the planet. So what do they have to do? They either have to go out and find more assets and zero the books that way, or they can pretend to do so. They can use crypto to seize hard assets and zero their balance that way. And it appears that that's what they're doing. They are using their ability to evaluate and to assign value to their very own cryptocurrency when they come to using it as collateral in the derivatives markets. How convenient does it get? And in the process, they're tokenizing assets. In other words, they are creating cryptocurrency representations of all the hard assets on the planet, and they're doing a swap. So in other words, the credit default swaps of yesterday, they're using the same model that led to the derivatives crisis in the first place. They're doing that, and they're swapping out now hard assets for more, not even paper now, but tranches of computer blips on a screen. As far as I'm concerned, folks, if that extreme reading is the case, and I grant you it's my very own personal, private, extreme reading of the situation, if that extreme reading of this situation is the case, they are moving at breakneck speed, not only to seize assets, but leave all the rest of us out in the cold, holding nothing, and subject to a beast system. And trust me, I don't think these people are in a very open or forgiving frame of mind. I think they would basically put everybody on subsistence wages while they balloon the economy for themselves. So this is one to watch, folks. I may be wrong about all of this, but I suspect that there is a huge, huge play for assets going on here. This beats anything that we saw in the Reconstruction era after the war between the states. But it looks an awful lot to me like the playbook was written back then. They've just updated it with the modern technology. So one more time, I'm going to read that one sentence in this article one more time to let all of the implications of this scheme that they're putting into place sink in. Quote, establishing clear rules for valuation, custody, and settlement will give institutions the certainty they need, while guardrails on reserves and governance will build trust and resilience. And then, remember, they're adding exemptions to that. So there we go, folks. They're gonna spin this in the most favorable way that they can. But quite frankly, I'm not persuaded until I see a whole lot of evidence otherwise. So that's it for today's news and views from the Nefarium, folks. We'll see you on the flip side. Bye bye and God bless.